Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today's video will be my May wrap-up. I read a total of 5 books in the month of May and started a 6th one, so let's get into my thoughts on them. First, I'll mention the book that I started in May. I actually started it on the 31st of May, so I had no expectations of actually finishing it, but it was The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. This is a book that was on my May TBR and I just didn't get to, and I replaced it with a different book, so we'll get into that one later. But I started this one on the 31st of May. I'm enjoying it. I haven't finished yet, and this is a wrap-up, so I don't have much thoughts on this one so far to mention, and when I finish it, you'll hear my thoughts at the end of June. The first book I finished in the month of May was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is an adult fiction, but also with fantastical elements in it. I had started it before May, and I just needed to finish it, so it was on my TBR. I finished it. However, I had to skim like the last 100 pages of this book. I was enjoying it at first. My sister really loved this book and she actually told me to read it, which is why I picked it up. I was enjoying it at first. I just think it seemed to be taking too long to get into things. It had a lot of elements to it. I liked the whole taking place at a circus theme, but I think it went on for a little too long, and it's not even that long of a book. Well, it's actually almost 500 pages. It just doesn't look it. But I don't know. I just, for whatever reason, maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it. I don't know. It was just taking me too long to read. And I feel like if I'm not fully enjoying a book, then I shouldn't like force myself to read it. I did only have 100 pages left of it, so I guess I should have. I think I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars if I remember correctly. Maybe 3.5. I think it was 3 though, because I just could not bring myself to read those last 100 pages. I just couldn't do it. Then I read Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Sheena McGuire. This is the second book in the Wayward Children series. I loved this book. I think it's even better than Every Heart a Doorway, which is the first book in the Wayward Children series. This one follows Jack and Jill, 2 characters that you met in the first book, and this is kind of their origin story. The whole premise of the Wayward Children series is set around other worlds, almost like Alice in Wonderland where she fell down the rabbit hole. So there's so many different types of worlds and so many different rules for them. Jack and Jill found themselves in this kind of darker world, and Jack and Jill right away are kind of separated to go to be almost mentored by 2 different characters. One is the Lord and one is this doctor, and Jack goes with the doctor, Jill goes with the Lord, and who is a vampire. And it takes off from there. I love these stories so much. I am able to fly through them. I've read this one in one day and I read Every Heart a Doorway in one day. The representation also in this series is really, really good. We get a lot of different sexualities in it and it's exciting. But yeah, I love this series. I have the 3rd one. I can't wait to pick it up. And the 4th one just came out at the beginning of this year. Can't wait to get that one as well. Then the next book I read is Aurora Rising by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This book is a YA science fiction novel. It is a book that I did a Twitter poll and I asked people what book I should buy, and I gave them 4 options, and this is the one that they chose. And I'm so glad they did because I read it in a day. The cast of characters in this book is amazing. I love them all. They're so funny. They act their age, which is something that I found really refreshing in a YA novel. There is some sort of innocence, there is some sort of childish mannerisms and sayings going on, but you gotta think that they are only like 16, 17, 18 years old. And at that time, I'm pretty sure I said some childish things as well. Aurora happens to be a girl who gets rescued by our captain in this book, where she was rescued from a cryogenic sleep, and she's been asleep for, how many years did they say? Quite a while. I think it's like 100 years or so. And so all of her family's dead. She doesn't know what happened. She doesn't know why she didn't arrive to the place that she was supposed to go to. And she's the only one that was actually alive within the cryo chamber. So she was rescued. The story takes off from there. It follows a band of just misfits, and we don't, like, they shouldn't be put together kind of thing because they all don't really belong, but they grow to really care about each other, and I love that whole aspect of knowing that your friends can truly be your family, and it was just so good. I think I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, but it might be a 4.5. It's just up there. That's all I can say. I really enjoyed this one. And then I was able to finish The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons. This is a high fantasy novel that I've been reading for, I think it was the entirety of May. I freaking loved this book. I freaking loved it. I for sure gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, and it is now one of my favorite books ever. Like, that's saying a lot. The Ruin of Kings follows a young man named Kieran who finds out that he is the son of a treasonous prince. And he originally was a thief and a minstrel's son, but he soon finds out that that's not actually true. The story follows 2 timelines for the most part. Kieran's story from the most recent events, and then a story from a demon named Talon, who kind of takes over his tale from closer to the beginning of it, some things that he missed. I know it's kind of weird that he kind of skipped some things, so they're kind of following closely behind each other. Something that's really cool about this book is the fact that Talon, the demon, is Kieran's jailer. So Kieran is in jail, and Talon is his jailer and tells him to tell her a story. Tell her the story about how he got there, about his life. So she hands him this rock, and she tells him that the rock it's like a magic rock. She doesn't tell him exactly what it does, but it basically records the entire story. So it's recording Talon's story and Kieran's story, and you can see it. You can visually see it within the novel. So, for example, I know I'm going into this a lot, but for example, it starts out with Kieran's story on the very first one, the very first chapter, and you get him talking in the regular text, and then it suddenly switches to italics. You can see that in kind of like the second paragraph here. It switches to italics, and that is not part of the story. It is Talon and Kieran kind of talking to each other in the present when he's in jail, if that makes any sense. So there's Talon's story, she follows in the next chapter, and then there's Kieran's story, and then there's the interwoven commentary between the two of them in the present. Then there's kind of this like 4th kind of story happening for someone who is listening to the rock that is recording the story. There's always asterisks in here, so there's an asterisk at the end of Talon's name up there, and it goes down to a footnote at the bottom of it, and it's commentary from the person who's listening to it. You find out who the person is maybe like 70 or so pages into the book, so that's not a huge big deal, but it's very interesting to see that, and I've never seen that in a fantasy novel before, so that's something new entirely in and of itself. And I have to mention that this is Jen Lyons' debut novel, and the way that she so masterfully weaved the stories together, and she really pushed the boundaries of what fantasy can be, and I really appreciated that. There's different levels of magic. There's witches, there's wizards, there's sorcerers, there's dragons, demons, and then there's this deeper story that kind of reminds me of The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson in a way, with these kind of forgotten gods and goddesses that somehow are connected to Kieran's story. The only flaw that I would say, the family and the kind of descendants and the genealogy basically of the whole thing can get very, very confusing. I was confused at a few points. There is in the back of the book, there is a family tree, but I would suggest not looking at that because it tells you who's dead and who's alive, and it definitely gives things away. Again, I can't tell the major thing that it would give away. It actually spoiled something for me, so don't look at the family tree in the very back. However, you can look through the glossary that is at the back of the book, because it has character names, how to pronounce them, place names and how to pronounce them, different creatures, the gods and goddesses, all that kind of stuff. So if you're confused, I would suggest looking at the glossary as well. But all in all, I freaking love this book. The sequel comes out in October. I cannot freaking wait to read it. And the final book I read was Unkindness of Ghost by River Solomon. This is one that I have been reading for a couple months, and then I finally finished it in May. It was in my May TBR to finish, so luckily I finished it. This is an adult sci-fi that is set in the future. The world has kind of ended, and now this is set like 300 years into the future. It is taking place on a spaceship called Matilda, where there are different levels, and each level, like the further down you go, the more poor and the workers are, and most of those workers are black people. And so this whole story is kind of about another civil war, because our main character here, her name is Aster, she kind of sets about a revolution. I only gave this book like 3 stars. I was enjoying it at first, but then it became a little too much for me in the whole sense of it being sci-fi to the point where there was so much science thrown into it. That's something you would think that you would want to be in a science fiction novel, but for me, it was just too much to the point where it was like taking away from the story in a way. I don't know. I couldn't understand half of what was going on with that side of it. And then the whole revolution thing only took place in the last like 30 pages of the book. And I just didn't like that. I didn't like how the main character didn't think about doing something until those last few pages anyway. And so at that point, everything just happened so fast. Oh, baby. My cat's walking right in front of me. And so, for the most part, everything just happened too quickly after that, because nothing was really coming about. For the most part, Aster was just trying to figure out what happened to her mother, who passed away like 25 years beforehand, and she was just trying to figure all that out, and the clues that her mother left behind for her, and I don't know. It all connects. Of course it does. But I guess I didn't enjoy this as much as I wanted to. So all in all, I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I really wish I enjoyed it a bit more, but alas, I did not. So there you have it, everyone. Those are the 5 books that I finished in the month of May, and the one that I started. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please comment down below and let me know if you've read any of these books and what you've thought about them. I would love to know. Please like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun YouTube stuff, and I will see you all next time. Bye!